I It's been a couple minutes. We can probably go ahead and get started. Um, so yeah, awesome. Welcome everyone. This is the second episode of our Builder How to Build webinar series, where we really dig into some of the most pressing questions and pitfalls that we hear and encounter every day from our customers in the world of content management. So today, I'm really excited. We have a really great topic that I'm really looking forward to go over with my colleague Logan, because honestly, I think it is probably one of the most, if not the most powerful tools that we have available within Builder. And I think a lot of our customers either are underutilizing symbols or don't even know how to use them or aren't using them at all. So we're really excited to be sharing this with y'all and hopefully get more people excited as we are to be using symbols, right? So symbols are an extremely powerful building block that empowers teams to create libraries or elements to make website building an absolute breeze. So much so actually that at Builder, we use them all the time. If you go to our homepage, you will see it is covered in symbols, right? So today we're going to walk through what is a symbol, how to create them, how to use them to design, redesign, totally revamp your website in no time at all. So, and if you think rebranding, rebuilding your entire web page in a matter of days or weeks with absolutely no dev work at all sounds pretty crazy, you know, that a lot of people would probably agree with you, but that's actually exactly what we did here at Builder. And more specifically, that's what my colleague who's here with me today, Logan, did. So we're really excited to dig into that. So my name is Tim Garibaldi. I lead our customer engineering team here at Builder, working with a lot of our largest enterprise customers. So I like to think that I have my finger on the pulse of what it is our customers are asking about, what they're talking about, and what they're doing within the Builder platform. So again, I'm super excited to be talking about one of our most powerful tools, symbols, with, I would say, one of our most powerful colleagues and secret weapons here at Builder. You may know him as a former support specialist extraordinaire, but he's actually the newest member of our marketing team here at Builder. He's the jack of all trades, Builder expert, all around great person. We have Logan with us today. Logan, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. And honestly, I'm ready to unlock this amazing time-saving feature in Builder for everyone.
Yes, I feel like probably more than anyone, you have coached countless customers on how to utilize symbols, as well as obviously, like I said, utilizing them on our website as well. So I'm super excited to get your perspective on all of this. Cool. So here's our quick agenda for the next 30, 45 minutes. We already had our welcome. We, in a second, are going to go through our topic of the day, which is, of course, how to use symbols. And then we will spend a few minutes talking about what that problem is, what we hear from our customers, what we see as these pain points that a lot of our customers are reporting, as well as how we at Builder, internally try to fix those problems for ourselves, but also for our customers and all the developments we've made with symbols. So then our very own Logan, of course, is going to talk through how he uses symbols and specifically how he used symbols when he was tasked with redesigning Builder.io's homepage just a few weeks ago. How he took that homepage, broke it down into some dynamic components, walk through the techniques that he used in creating a library of these components in just a couple of days. And then, of course, we will have some time at the end for questions. So there should be a chat enabled somewhere down in the little chat bar, wherever you put that, or a Q&A as well. I'm not quite sure what the difference between the two is, but post a question somewhere and we will try to get to it today. How does that sound, Logan? Sound good?
It sounds good. Let's get into it.
Awesome. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So why are we here today, right? Let's talk about a story that we hear constantly from our customers while they're building web apps, right? So you are a marketing team or a dev team, and you have the task of creating new web pages, either single landing pages or an entire site redesign. And you need to figure out how to take a new design and how to make it a live page ASAP, right? Traditionally, I mean, you could create all of these pages individually in code, but that's neither scalable nor flexible, right? It's very expensive in terms of time and dev resources. So you could take a look at your page then and say, hey, we can break this up into different custom code components. But that can be shared across a lot of your pages. But now you realize, again, you don't have any time and you don't have the dev budget to do that, right? So if you're smart, like we like to say, maybe you have a visual CMS like Builder available to you, and you can actually build all of these pages without requiring dev resources, right? You could build something, each page, just have your marketing team whip something up within Builder, but using your WYSIWYG drag and drop editor and create these pages without any dev resources at all. But again, that requires a lot of work. Each individual page, you don't want to have to build from scratch. Anytime that you want to make any changes across all those pages, you're going to have to go into each individual one and make a change to the font, to the color, something on each individual page. It can get very expensive in terms of time it takes to make these changes across all your page, right? So these traditional methods are always a trade-off between flexibility and scalability, right? So what it starts to sound like, what if we could create a library of reusable, dynamic, custom code components that still have the flexibility and scalability of Builder, right, with the drag and drop editor, but also the flexibility of not having to write any code, not having to use all of your dev resources, right? We hear this all the time. We need a new page, we need a new design, and we need it yesterday. So enter symbols, dun, 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 right? A symbol is a visual component that is built within Builder and usable across any and all of your content entries, right? So it's even usable outside of Builder. So you could use it on pages that aren't necessarily built within Builder, right? It can be a static component, or it can be a dynamic component based on inputs. It can be personalized and targeted to specific customers. And it can be reused, most importantly, across your website, right? So now you're probably saying, okay, a symbol is a template, right? And it's very similar to a template, but there's a huge, really powerful distinction around them, right? So templates are very powerful. You create a template, you drop it on a page, and now you're able to customize that template and work with it on that page. What sets a symbol apart, though, is that the symbol is based on a single source of truth, a single parent component, right, that has its own inputs, its own styling, even complex user interactions. It can have complex JavaScript or CSS logic, whatever you need. And then if updated in that parent symbol, it'll populate those changes to all instances of that component across your site. So let's take an example, right? A perfect use case for a symbol would be something like a header or a footer, something that's used across all over, all of the pages on your website. So let's say with a header, right? There's lots of styling, there's lots of menus, submenus, drag and drop elements that you want to be able to build within Builder, a lot of logic, signups, anything like that, right? That is going to be used across every single page and going to be the same across every single page, right? So you don't want to build it on each page, because anytime you want to make a change, let's say the design team says, hey, we need to change the background, we need to change the font. If this was a simple template, you would have to go through and find each instance of it and update it. But since you're using a symbol, right, you can make that change just on the parent element, and it's going to populate across every instance throughout your site, right? Really cool, really powerful. So now we kind of have the understanding of what a symbol is, but now I think it would be super helpful if we could understand what's the best way to use them. How do you start from a design, from your design team, and get to a beautiful library of these reusable symbols, okay? So I think that's a great question. And I think at this point, we want to really bring in our experts, which would be Logan. Logan, we'd love to hear, what do you think about symbols? And I guess maybe we can take a step back even, how did you get involved in the redesign of our Builder.io homepage to where you were even kind of contemplating symbols?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I was hired on as a support specialist here at Builder. That role is primarily answering technical integration and building questions. So all about building content within Builder and making that available to your developers, marketers, and content creators. So I had a lot of experience with looking at different pages and layouts where maybe someone was duplicating content across an entire page, but they weren't using symbols. So it was really hard to then go back into that and make changes when your marketing or your design team says, well, all our headers should be blue. And now you
Mhm.
have to go through the whole website and change your headers to be blue. We don't want that experience because that's
Totally.
not saving us any time.
Yeah.
So our marketing team wanted to go through a refresh of our brand and our website. And I volunteered really to jump in there and use those best practices that I've learned about Builder to start identifying elements in our website design that could be basically we could build a symbol and then reuse that symbol throughout the website. So if we take a look at the builder.io homepage, we'll see that we have this really unique and interesting design that has plenty of repeating elements. We'll see that throughout our page that we have sets of headers and sets of logos. We have sets of images, lots of different related elements in terms of design that are repeated throughout our site.
Mhm.
I want to draw your attention specifically to these images side by side with text. We use these pretty much everywhere because it's very common to want to feature an image alongside text. And I
Totally.
identified this as a great opportunity to turn this into a symbol. The great thing about a symbol is that you can update it once, and that is reflected everywhere. And you can make it so that it takes input, which means that you can dynamically change the header, the text, the image, whatever you need to do without someone at your team who isn't necessarily design savvy, who doesn't necessarily know Builder and all of its features. They are now empowered to go into your content and make the changes necessary for either your marketing or design needs.
So this is
So
basically like a superpower template where all of these things have common styling, common elements, common layout, but then you can see the images are different, the text is different, the content is different. So it's still got the power of the symbol, but then there's flexibility with, having inputs.
yeah, definitely the right approach for symbols is finding a repeating element that needs a little bit of flexibility to be universal throughout your entire project. So I've kind of identified some specific symbols that show off the full capability of symbols. And I've broken those down into 4 different demos that we're going to handle today. So when we switch over back to our slides and get on to our first slide here, we'll see that we have our first task. Super simple here. We're just going to show off the process of installing a symbol and making a tiny little change that is reflected everywhere. Then in our second task, we're going to move on to a symbol with inputs. This symbol is going to have that image and text side by side. And we want it to be flexible enough that we can upload a new image, we can edit the copy, but we can't break the layout. We're also going to take on a real challenge that I personally had, which was being able to dynamically reverse the order of that block without, having to have a completely new symbol. In our third task, we're going to tackle a more complex set of inputs. Now we have multiple cards here, but instead of creating a symbol card and then repeating that symbol several times, we're actually just going to take input for each one of those cards and dynamically update the amount of cards in the symbol. So this is going to be flexible to move to more or less cards depending on our input. Finally, in our fourth task, we're going to get that list of inputs from an external source. We're going to get that from dynamic data. And for each one of those entries in our data, we're going to display an image. And that image is going to be interactive. We're going to be able to click that image and display more information about the product without having to request more information from your database. So we have a lot of powerful examples here that I'm going to walk you through. All of my layouts are set up, but we're going to just focus on the creation of the symbols. So we're going to switch over to my screen now.
I was going to say, I don't know that you can do all of this in the next 30 minutes, but we'll see.
I think we can. It's going to be easy. It's not that
All
hard.
right, great.
So here I have a Next.js app. I just kind of spun this up using our GitHub. But you can integrate Builder in lots of different ways. You can install that on an existing web page, or you can start a web page from scratch with Builder integrated. In this case, I have my symbols installed here. This is a symbol. This is a symbol. This header is a symbol. This section is a symbol, and that represents our third demo. And our final demo here, we can see that in action when we click on each card or updating this information here. I think this demo is really powerful because it shows you that you can create an e-commerce web page with products. And when you click on a product, you probably want to show more information without reloading the page. So why not include that in a modal that pops over your product grid? Or maybe you have a set of employees that you'd like to showcase on your website. This particular design pattern can be replicated and changed just a little bit to be powerful wherever it's placed. Yeah. So we're going to switch over to Builder now. Here is what it looks like with my page all assembled. In this case, most of this is symbols. And I'm actually going to delete these. These were from a test run that we did. But here we have individual symbols which are installed on my page, and they come together to create my layout. So if I take a look at my Builder dashboard, my content, I have 3 different types of content here. I have page models, that's where I assemble my pages. I have section models, which represent sections that I make in Builder. And then I have CMS data models, which represent tables of data just like any other database. In my section models, I have stored all of my symbols. Symbols are a type of section. A section can be installed anywhere, whether that's in an existing app or website that you have, or within a Builder's page model. So there is a lot of flexibility here in terms of your own tech stack to take advantage of section models and symbols. So within this symbol folder, I've got my demos. So let's go ahead and take a look at our first demo. I'm going to just go into a blank page here. And on this blank page, I'm going to install my header symbol. I'm going to open up my insert tab and go to my code section and drop in my symbol. My symbol is going to allow me to select from any one of my section models. And in this case, I just want my symbols. And I'll go ahead and import my header. It's really that simple. So now on this page, I can identify a particular symbol by noticing that it's highlighted in purple rather than our regular blue. And I can find my way back to the parent symbol by editing that symbol here. So in our first task, our marketing team has decided that sign in is maybe less useful than saying open app. And instead of, going throughout my entire website and updating my header for every single page, I'm just going to go into my symbol here and update this to say open app, publish that change. When I publish a change, that makes that change available to every instance that I've placed this symbol on. Now, if I head back to my demo page, just reload the page here, we'll see that that button now says open app. Now we can imagine, what if we have any type of element that repeats throughout our website? Now I have the power to update every single element with basically no work, right? That's super great.
Very cool.
So a lot of the times the designs that you have are going to be really strong layouts that need to be flexible with new content. So what we're going to do here is set that up. Here I have my image and text pairing, and what I'm going to do is create inputs that people can use to update the information that's there, and then bind to those inputs. The final result here on our demo page allows me to go into the options tab and see my inputs right here. My header right here, I can update to say, builder is pretty cool. And I'm doing that, and that matches the design that has already been established. It doesn't break the design, and it looks good. So let's go ahead and set that up. The first thing that I want to do inside of my symbol is head over to the data tab. The data tab has content inputs, and that's going to represent our fields here in the options tab. And what I'd like to collect is an image and the various types of text here. So I'll go ahead and create a new field, and I'll call this an image. And I'll switch the type to a file. Let's go ahead and collect our header text. We'll collect our subheader text. And I also have a rich text field. And I want this to be a rich text field because I need the flexibility to be able to take in HTML or CSS markup. I need to be able to support different headers, bullet points, number points, whatever is needed within that content. So I've got my inputs ready to go. And now I'd like to actually see what those look like when I bind to them. So it's important to set up my default values. In each one of my inputs here, I'm going to set a default value. In this case, for the image, I'd like this to display this diagram. For my header, I'd like to say that builder is cool. For my subheader, I'll just fill that with some lorem ipsum. And I'll do the same for my rich text here. So I've got my content inputs, each of which has a default value, so we have something to work with. And we can see that in our content state. However, our default values still need to be initialized. The best way to get that is to just go ahead and refresh your page at this point. That's going to allow Builder to understand that you have those defaults ready to go. Here they are. So now let's actually pull off the magic here. We'll go ahead and select our image. We'll go into our element data bindings and we'll create a new binding. We'll get our image from one of our inputs. Builder is smart enough to recognize that you have inputs or data available in your content state. So when we click on this box, we've got lots of options to choose from. In this case, we want to get the image from the image input. And there we go. Let's go ahead and do the same for our text here. We'll go ahead and get our header from our header input. We'll get our subheader text from our subheader input. And we'll do the same for this rich text box. There we go. So now we have a symbol with inputs. Let's go ahead and make sure that this is working. I'll go ahead and publish the change. I'll go ahead and jump onto my page here and install my symbol. And we'll select my second demo here. Here we have my default values ready to go. I'll swap out my image with this illustration here. And our marketing team really thinks that it's important for everyone to know that Tim is cool. So we're going to go ahead and update that. Now, having this block right underneath a block with an image in the same position is not necessarily the greatest look for design. So the big challenge that I had was being able to swap the text and the image dynamically with just a click of a button. So what we can do is take advantage of the ability to bind to style. So style is represented as JSON. And in this case, what that means is that we can bind to attributes of style using element data bindings. Let's go ahead and do something simple by saying style.color. And in this case, we want to get our color from a string or some text, and we'll set that to blue. And now my text style is blue. Of course, we want to make this dynamic. We want to ask a switch, basically a question. We want to be able to switch between left and right and ask that switch if it has been turned on. So let's go ahead and create a new input. And in this case, I'll go ahead and call this flip order. And this flip order is just going to be a Boolean, and otherwise a switch. All it does is this. It switches on and off. Here we go, flip order. So what I like to do here is ask flip order a question. And I want to affect something on style that changes the order of my elements. If you take a look at CSS order, that's an attribute which affects the order of elements inside of a flexbox. This layout is using flexbox, and all I need to do here is set the order to be -1 when I switch on flip order. Otherwise, just let this element sit where it naturally flows. So I'll go ahead and say get style.order, and I'm going to ask flip order a question. Let's go ahead and open up our code here to ask it a question. So if flip order is true, I want to return the value -1. And if it's false, I'm going to return 0. So this is called a ternary operator in JavaScript, and you can reference that if you need the particular syntax to look at. But the important thing is that we can ask a value a question and then do different things whether or not that's true or false.
Yeah.
So now when I flip this switch, I can dynamically switch the order between left and right.
Amazing. So, I mean, basically, any CSS value, any styling value, any JavaScript logic within a symbol can be dynamic and turned into an input. So where, depending on what your design is, you have the flexibility to achieve what it is you want.
Exactly.
Really cool.
So we can just duplicate this symbol and we can flip the order. And now this looks super cool and clean.
Yeah, nice, amazing.
I'm
I mean, that's already a huge chunk of your site now, was that section with all the repeating things, and you only have to build it once and then just plop it on the page. Great.
Yeah, exactly. So let's go ahead and move on to our second demo, where now we're not just taking inputs, but we're taking a set of inputs. Let's see what that looks like on our finished page. So here we have our inputs, and we have particular columns that are available here. Each column, or card, as we might say, has an image here, a header, a paragraph, button text, and a button link. And I can duplicate this column or card as many times as I need, according to how many products I have, and dynamically update that information right in Builder without having to style anything. This is really great for when you have a product team that needs to update information quickly and easily. So let's get into it. Let's go ahead and switch over to our third demo here. And here I have just a really simple card that has an image, text, and a button. And what I'd like to do is showcase the list input. I'll go ahead and get started by creating a new input, just like last time. I'll call this cards. And this cards is going to be a list. This list has its own fields and its own default value. So let's take a look. I'll create a new field, and this is where I'm taking input for an individual card. I'll go ahead and say that I want an image. I'll set that to a file. I'll go ahead and say that I want a title, and I'll set that to text. I'll do the same with my text here. And we'll get some button text and a link for that button. Go ahead and switch that to a URL. So just like last time, I'll go back through and set some default values. In this case, I want a product icon. Our title, we'll go ahead and show that this is for quick. For our text, we'll say something like quick is awesome. Our button text will say framework. And since this is only a demo and we aren't actually going to link anywhere, I'm just gonna have my default value be our standard homepage. So I'll go ahead and create a default value here. Here's our default value. Our first card is populated with an image, title, text, and button text and link. Just like last time, I'm just going to go ahead and refresh the page to give Builder that option to recognize those inputs. Now I can jump into my content state and create a bunch of cards, which is great. So let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like when I bind to our element here. So the first thing that I want to do is be able to repeat for each card that I have in my inputs, my content state. What I'm going to do is open up my element data bindings, and with the box that I want to repeat selected, I'll select repeat for each. I'll drop that down. Builder is smart enough to recognize a list, and a list in coding terms is an array. And in both cases, a list is an indexed, and otherwise each item has a number assigned to it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so we can loop through that list and provide the information inside of it. We'll go ahead and repeat for each card. And now when I create multiple cards, I can create multiple elements here on my page. Of course, let's get the actual information from those cards. I'll go ahead and bind my image from the cards item that I'm on. In this case, I'll get the image.
So Builder is smart enough to recognize like you're inside a repeat. So you only need that data from that like entry in the array.
Yeah, I'm individually selecting each one of those items, and Builder is smart enough to understand how that works. We'll actually open the syntax and show you what that looks like. Builder uses this special item additive to the array that you're working on. So we say state.cards item, and then the particular element that we want to bind to. I'll go ahead and do the same with our text here and, or well, our button here. And this is just going to show you that you can indeed have multiple bindings for a particular element. So
Cool.
now that we've completed binding our data, our inputs to our elements, we can create multiple cards. We can change out the information and see what that looks like. Of course, it's important to note that when you're working inside of a symbol and you're working with the content state is not necessarily universal. Once you place this on a page, the cards you create here are not going to be available. So let's actually take a look at what that looks like. I'll switch over to my, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so you're basically just setting up the like default state and bindings. And then when you place it on the page, that's when you actually update that individual instance's inputs and that like local state to that instance is kind of what it sounds like.
Yeah, exactly. What we want is to be able to input new information, and what this section here inside of the symbol is doing is just allowing us to see a preview of what those inputs would look like.
Got it.
So let's go ahead and create some extra cards. We'll go ahead and switch out the image for one of the cards and so on. I think we have a pretty solid understanding of how inputs work in symbols at this point. So we'll go ahead and delete this, and we'll move on to our fourth and final demo. This one is going to be taking some external data, looping through it and showing us more information. I'll go ahead and show you what that looks like. So in Builder, you can create a table of data. In this case, I've created a table of integrations that Builder has. And so we can see these here listed individually. And we're going to go into my fourth demo here and import that data. And a lot of times you're probably not going to have your data stored directly in Builder. You're going to have that externally somewhere like Airtable, Content Stack, Shopify, whatever your company is using and has been using for 20 years. So you're probably going to get your data from elsewhere. But whatever the case is, you're going to be able to connect your data either here or through the API data source section to be able to import your data. In this case, I'm going to import my integrations and have that available to you in the content state. So we're going to actually take a look at what that looks like, because for this demo, understanding the data structure that I'm being returned is important to being able to understand how to bind to it. So I have this little helpful state explorer, which allows me to dig into my data without having to know how to code. So I have my state, and inside of my state, I have this integrations object, which is the data that I just imported. So we'll go ahead and take a look at what's in there. I have a results array. And as we know from the previous example, an array is just a list. And if we open that results array, what a surprise. We have a list here. And in code, rather than starting from 1, we start from 0. So we have a list labeled from 0 to 5. That's 6 items in total, right? So inside of each one of these items, we have data. That data is stored in an object. We'll go ahead and open that up. And here's where our data is stored. We've got a description, an image, and a name to work with. In this case, for my cards here at the top, what I'd like to do is loop through all of my results, go into the data, and extract the image. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll select the box that I want to repeat, and I'll go into my element data bindings. Just like before, Builder is smart enough to recognize an array or a list when it's available to you. So we'll go ahead and repeat for each one of the results that I have for my integrations. So this looks pretty great, but our Shopify logo is still static. Let's make that dynamic. I'll go ahead and select my image. I'll create a new binding. I'll get my image. And just like before, Builder is smart enough to understand the data inside of the item that you're repeating through. So now we have access to our name, our link, our image, and our description. I'll go ahead and select our image. And there we go. We just created basically a product box or a product card that we can loop through our data with.
Nice.
So,
and this, I mean, so you added data from a Builder UI, but like any public API that you add in like that API data section is going to show up the same in content state, right? So this can be dynamic to whatever your site requirements are, really.
Yeah, the power of Builder is that you can actually get your data and see it and work with it. A lot of other site builders or content builders maybe won't show you what that data looks like, and you kind of have to abstractly work with it. But Builder lets you work with that data and actually see what it looks like and know what the final result is while you're working with it. It's really great. So now we're going to talk a little bit about a provided bit of code which allows you to really turn this into a dynamic interaction. So Builder is smart enough to understand the number of the item that it is working inside of. And Builder has this value in state called $index. And what we're going to do is ask for the $index of a particular item when we click on it, set that to our state, and then use that to bind to an item in our list. Makes sense while we're working on it, don't worry. So I'll go ahead and select my repeating box again. And what I'm going to do is create a click event. This click event is just going to run some custom code. And that custom code is going to be very, very simple. What I'm going to do is create a new value on state. I'm going to say state dot integration index. So we're just going to create a value that will hold the index or the number of the current integration. And how are we going to get that value? We're just going to say state dot $ index. That's all the code that we're going to write here. So what does that look like? So if we take a look at our content state, we look specifically at this integration index input. When we click on an integration, we're going to set integration index equal to the index of the item that we clicked in the repeating element. So now we can say Magento, that's our 0th object in our array. So when we click on it, we're going to get 0. BigCommerce card shows 1, and so on. So now we have this number. We can take advantage of that number to select a specific item in our data. So let's get started with our image to show you what that looks like. I'm going to go ahead and click on our Salesforce Commerce Cloud and get that integration index of 5 loaded in. So now I have this number 5 that I can take advantage of. Let's do that. So in our content input, nope, not our content inputs, our element data bindings. I'll create a new binding. And just like any other image, I'm going to get that image from something. In this case, I want this to come from integrations, results at the 5th number, right? So our 5th object here. Looks like we have data object in there. And then finally, we have an image, which is just a URL of an image that's stored on Builder. Let's go ahead and use a little bit of JavaScript to get that done. So what I'll go ahead and do is say state.integrations.results. I'll make sure that's right. State.integrations.results. And now this is the part where we want to pass our integration index into what we're binding to. So in an array or a list, we can dynamically choose which number we're selecting with brackets, just like this. And these brackets support passing in any number. So we can say 0, 1, 2, or we can pass in a variable, which is what we have in this case. So I'm going to say state.integration index. Remember, this just represents 5 right now. And then I'm going to say .data. So we're going to open up that data object here. And now we just have to go one more in and select our actual value. So .image. Let's go ahead and do that here. .image. State.integrations.results. That's all right, right?
Yeah, you might just need to refresh the preview or something.
Yeah, I might have taken too long. And Builder was like, I don't know what this error is, but we're going to shut it down.
Yeah.
There we go. So I've got my Magento here. And if I click on Salesforce Commerce Cloud,
Nice.
There we go. Now I'm binding dynamically to the number of the card that I clicked on. And I don't have to, request more information from my database. I've already got it. And I'm just getting that information from the results I already have. So how do we bind to the rest of it? It's going to be just as simple as copying this expression that I've written. I'm going to bind to our text here to get the name of our current product. So I'll change this from image to name. I'll change this from name to description. And we'll get our learn more link from our link. There we go.
Amazing. Awesome.
So I'm able to publish that change. And now on my final page where I've already got this installed, I can see that I can click on each product. And if I were to click this button, that would take me to the associated link that was available for my data.
Yeah, and then, I mean, we built this, but you could even make that input or the data source or something its own input, so that this product, this component now can be product cells. It can be, like you said, the like your executive team or something, or be reusable anywhere else across the site, and not necessarily tied to this exact data, but it's still, you don't have to rebuild that functionality over and over again. It's super, super cool. I'm actually like, so I went to coding school and like learned how to code, and it reminds me very much of when you first learned coding, like that aha moment of like how things all plug together when you get to see. It's the same with symbols. Symbols are essentially code components that are built completely visually. And so when you see where you were setting up those data bindings and pulling in the data source, and it all just kind of pops on this page and all of a sudden just like works, and you kind of don't understand why it's working, but it like is, and it's just like a little magic almost. Like that's that great aha moment that really comes with coding, and I think a lot of users are going to be able to get with using symbols as well. So awesome, like very exciting to see.
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, the first thing that you said was, yeah, we can indeed, instead of getting this data externally, we can use a list input to provide the list of, integrations that we have, and provide this information, and use a list all internally as inputs. So like if we were to click Partytown, it would show us more information just by reusing the same thing, but now with inputs instead of dynamic data. Totally. And the second thing that you mentioned was, being able to understand code in this new visual way. I think a builder is going to provide you with the opportunity to do things that in code would otherwise be a little more abstract and confusing. But also, if you're open-minded to it, Builder is a great tool for you to visualize what you're doing inside of code without getting too complex, and actually learn to be able to be more powerful at your job. Even if you're a marketer like me and you don't really necessarily have a lot of skills in code, you can learn these really simple tricks to be able to create layouts that otherwise you'd have to hire a developer for.
Totally. Yeah, I work with a bunch of the marketing teams from our customers who have no code experience, and some of the stuff they're able to build is really, really cool to see. So this was awesome.
I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and you can switch back to our slides.
Yeah, sounds good. Let me make sure I have the right. Uh-oh. And now I lost it. There we are. I lost the like. Okay, there we go. All right. Awesome. That was incredible, Logan. Thank you so much for that. That kind of concludes our demo portion, but we obviously have a ton of documentation about a lot of this, about creating symbols, creating dynamic symbols with inputs, using data bindings, all that kind of stuff. All is available within our product documentation, which you can find on our website. And so, yeah, we'd love for you to try it out and just like get back to us with any questions, any issues you have. Feel free, of course, always to submit a ticket to our support team. And if you have any questions or want help finding solutions, we're always happy to help, as well as feel free to reach out. We have a link to talk to our solutions engineering team that can help with setting up new apps and stuff like that. So yeah, questions. So I think we have a few questions. I can pull up here. So we have one question from Laura. Laura says, what's the difference between the symbol under code and my symbols in the left panel? And actually, I can maybe pull up just a quick little example to show this. 1 second. Probably should have had this ready. But the short answer is there shouldn't be anything. they should be, ooh, let me go back to that. Great. Okay, well, there shouldn't be any real differences. You should be able to see all of your symbols. If you're, say, so this is like a demo site that I have. So Logan kind of used a more common way, which is if you go into the code components, there's this symbol that you can drop onto a page. But we also down have this my symbols, which is going to pull your symbols, just make them a little more readily available. And this is based off of anything that's in your symbol model. And one thing that Logan kind of touched on is that you can pull anything that's in your symbol model can be a symbol, but you can also pull any section or page model and have that count as a symbol. It will inject that onto the page. So once you place it onto the page, you can kind of select different sections or different models. But this my symbols section here is going to pull automatically from your symbol model, just a different way to kind of access it. So
and to clarify exactly what's going on here, the my symbols category is going to specifically pull from a section model called symbols.
Yeah.
And that's something that you're suggested to create when you create your very first symbol. So
yeah.
For most people, these are the exact same thing. But if you have multiple section models inside of Builder, and let's say you're using those as folders to organize your blocks, you're going to want to go into your code, drag your symbol block onto the page, then choose the model and entry that is relevant for your design.
Yep. Cool. All right, Elise has a great question. So can multiple Boolean switches be set up in a symbol so that each symbol can be customized in several ways? Yes, definitely. So if you add, any sort of symbol that has a bunch of inputs, let's go edit that symbol. Yes, you are able to, as long as the as long as the input has a different name, you can have as many inputs as you want. And they can all be different Booleans or different input types. These input types are the exact same as like our custom field input types, and they're available. We have documentation around that on our site. But yeah, so you can have as many inputs as you want of the same type. It doesn't really matter. One caveat, of course, that we would say is like, once you get into way too many inputs, then it starts to, get a little unruly. So you want to be a little smart about where you're putting inputs in, and what is an input versus what is not. Anything, Logan?
A Boolean switch is really great for, like, let's say you have a pretty much universal symbol, but in a couple cases, you maybe want to change the font size or the font color or switch items around. Little things like that are okay. But when you have so many different switches that it's basically like its own template, you might as well just break that down into smaller symbols that take less inputs so that you have more granular control over those elements.
Great. Yep. Awesome. Thank you, Logan. And then we have one more question from Laura. What is the best way to edit symbols on pages where component only mode is turned on? So this is one that's actually a great question. I was kind of looking this up. Let me see if I can go back. So components only mode, for those of you that don't know, is basically a way where you can restrict Builder to only use custom code components that your dev team has built and integrated, registered within the Builder platform. So you might not necessarily have access to that symbol component that's in the input menu. But if you do have symbols, that my symbols folder that we showed a second ago, you will have access to that. So you can still drag and drop symbols that were defined in your symbol section model, but it gets a little complicated in that, like, those are restricted again into only using the components provided by your team. So yeah, you might need to like maybe turn off components mode while you're building the symbols, or if you want to pull those symbols into the page or something like that. Yeah, I don't know, Logan, do you have experience with using symbols in components only mode?
I have really just two things that I'd want to say is that, Laura, I totally recommend just creating your own organization in Builder and getting comfortable with working with symbols and content in Builder. We have lots of resources in our documentation that really walks you through how to create content and work with Builder. So the more you up that skill and the more confident you are in creating stuff directly in Builder, you can then, if your organization currently has components only mode turned on, and you want to have access to those symbols, maybe part of what your learning journey will be is, asking them to turn components only mode off and being able to create that content directly in Builder. The power is that symbols allow you to get away from your developers and relying on them creating components for you, being able to do that without knowing any code directly in Builder. The second thing that I'd say is jump into ideas.builder.io and submit this idea. Make it so that you can set components only mode turn on, but allow for symbols to be placed.
Cool. Yeah, and I see Taylor dropped that ideas.builder.io link in the chat. Always feel free, everyone. We recommend y'all check that out. That's a great place to submit any feedback that you have for us, any feature requests. And we always build a lot of things based on the feature requests that we get directly from our customers. So cool. All right. Well, I think that's it. Right at the 59-minute mark, right on time. So thank you very much, everyone who joined us. We will be posting this on YouTube, so you should be able to share with your colleagues or anyone you think this might be helpful for. But we really appreciate you joining us. And of course, Logan, huge shout out to you. Really appreciate your demos and walking us through everything. That was super illuminating, and I'm super excited to start using symbols, or use symbols more, I should say.
Yeah, thank you everyone for being here. I hope this saves you, like, I don't know, 1,000 hours, and you can take an entire week of vacation because all your work is done. That would be ideal. And if you have any questions, even if it's like, I don't understand how this worked and Logan did something and I'm confused and the recording doesn't show it, write us a question. Tell me about what you are doing, and I will be more than happy to work with our support team to get you an answer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your week, and yeah, let us know how it goes, and feel free to reach out, like Logan said. Have a good one. All right.